And we live. Hello, everyone. How are you doing? Welcome to Bourbon Nights Real Talk with Men. So, listen, we cannot wait to get started. The topic today is love, lust, and religion. And before we bring the guest out, I want to remind you guys to please like, follow, and share our page. As we bring the guest out tonight, please feel free to interact, ask questions, give us your comments. We really appreciate that. And so let's go ahead and get started. My name is Vicky. I'm a licensed professional counselor here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I am CEO of a Better You Counseling Center. And let me go ahead and introduce my other lovely co-host.
I am the April Michelle. I am a licensed therapist out of Indianapolis, Indiana, specializing in depression, anxiety, and trauma.
And I am Love's Passion. I'm a clinical certified sexologist and master life coach. I specialize in women with arousal issues.
Yay. So y'all ready to bring these guests on?
Let's get it started.
Yes, cannot wait.
Okay, so I will, if it's okay, I'm going to go ahead and bring my guest on first, okay? All right, so I am bringing on the stage Demeko Bivens, okay? Demeko is the husband of one wife, the father of two children. Demeko and his best friend Ralph Peters planted or started Sojourn Southside Church on the south side of Houston, Texas, almost a year ago. Demeko loves God. He loves people, the sitcom Martin, sports, soul food, Asian food, and playing spades bone with his friends, both Christian and not yet Christians, on Sunday evening on the front porch. Now that's what I'm talking about. That's a good old Southern man. So everybody help me say hello to Demeko Bivens.
What's
Hi,
happening?
Demeko.
Hey,
Demeko.
what's good? Great to be with you, ladies and gentlemen, in a little while. Great to be with y'all.
Yes,
Great
good
to have you. Great to have
Oh,
you.
me and Vicky, we go way back, way back. Been knowing you
Way back.
very, very long time, very long time. You still ain't on time to nothing, but we got a lot. We got a lot of history.
Don't come out here showing out now. Don't come out here showing out. Because I can be
okay.
I can be on time now.
Right, that's what I said. Don't come out here telling the truth.
Don't listen. Share my other truth. Share my other truths. What's my other truths?
You love God. You like to sing. I can't say you sing well, but you like to sing. You're very
right.
fashionable. You're very fashionable. You're great to sing karaoke with. You are the life of the party. Anywhere you are, it's gonna be a good time.
Oh, you know what? You had everything right, but when you said I like to sing, but you're not gonna say I can. I wanna go back and say I can sing and I love to sing as well.
Okay.
Thank
All right.
you.
Thanks for clarity.
Yeah.
I would like to say you like to make a joyful noise.
Oh. Okay, you know what? I'm gonna end the show with a verse too. So don't even go there. But let's go ahead and bring the next one on, April.
Oh,
Okay, everyone, please welcome Ralph Vandell, fashion wedding photographer, hailing from Indianapolis, Indiana, specializing in sensual, elegant, and dramatic photography. Ralph Vandell is a husband and a father of 3, and he loves God.
Okay. Hi, Ralph.
Hey, how everybody doing?
Good.
Good,
How
good.
are you tonight?
Oh, sleepy.
Oh,
That old man syndrome kicking in.
Not the old man syndrome. You tried it.
Give y'all some of our energy, honey. Because that doesn't exist with us, huh?
Right.
Okay. You got to get some energy going.
Hey, I work a lot. I work a lot.
Tonight.
You do. You do. Celebrity photographer.
Yeah, stay busy. Stay busy.
All right. And tell them one of your main celebrity is moi.
There it is, Miss Vicky herself.
What? What you say? You better know
Yep.
this.
She's
You know how
sweet.
to show out. You know how to show out, Miss Vicky.
Don't she?
Yep.
Don't she?
And Miss Hat over here, she be showing out too in front of the
Okay.
camera.
Trying to act all shy tonight, huh?
Right. All you
Trying
gotta
to
do is
act
put her
all
on
shy.
camera. She know what to
What have
do.
you seen?
Okay.
Then I hear a camera shutter. Okay. She was stopped, honey, and ready to pose. Ready to
Come on.
Right.
pose.
Come on.
So, guys,
All day.
let's get started. Let's talk about love, lust, and religion. So, if you want to, we're gonna let April go ahead and take us in on this. While we sit back and relax and listen.
So, gentlemen, and whoever wants to go first is fine. But to start us off, when you think about love and lust and just being a Christian man in 2023, how does that fit? In your lifestyle, in terms of being married, dating, all of that. How does that look in 2023 to be a Christian and married or dating?
We might need to let Raph go first since he's sleepy. We got to keep him awoke.
Okay.
Yeah, keep me talking.
Go.
This is bourbon nights,
Go.
right? Y'all got some bourbon I can drink something.
Listen, go in that cabinet and pull it out.
Yes, you are welcome to drink
Up
bourbon.
that old fashioned, what they have, those little glass canister with the little
Right.
top on it, little crisp. Go ahead and pour that out.
Yeah. I'm gonna need some of that.
We got some water that was turned from wine. Some wine that was turned from water.
I would say commitment is a big deal, or it's always been a big deal. When I first got married, I read in Malachi that God hates divorce or whatever, and then you got those old church members, they be getting on you, and they kind of like drill you, beat you over the head with certain things or whatever. So that kind of scared me and intimidated me early on, but I knew it was serious. So I felt that they meant well about what they were trying to say to me or whatever. So I always knew, regardless of how fine a lady might have been, that whoever I decided to date or decide to marry, ultimately it came down to a full-fledged commitment, and not wavering in my decision, if you know what I mean, and being committed to that one person. So for me, I would say that has been the foundation, is commitment. And so I think Eric and I were going on 24 years now. Um, and like with most relationships, you go through a whole bunch of ups and downs, things of that nature. But because of my seriousness for commitment, I think that's what has really helped us, even in the trying current times, with her sickness and stuff like that. Is that level of commitment or whatever. So that's kind of like the foundation for me, where it all really started from, is commitment. Not to say that I don't see a fine young lady, because I'm around women like all the time. Majority of my clientele are women, and so I do have to keep things business without crossing the line or what have you, but
Right.
that commitment, that's one of the things that's been kind of like holding me accountable or what have you. So but yeah, commitment for me is where it starts.
And Ralph, before you say something, Demeko, I want to say to Ralph, I think that was very transparent of you to say what you said. Being a Christian, being married, and being able to say that the commitment part is a challenge, and you work in an industry where you can definitely be enticed, and you see these other beautiful women because your eyes still work.
Mhm.
Right.
And being able to say that the commitment is what keep you from not crossing that line. And I tell people all the time that I work with that when you become an adult, it's not about what I want, it's about the commitment that I made. So I get up and go to work because I'm committed. I'm responsible because I'm committed. It's not because I want to, it's just I'm committed. I may not like you right now, but because I am committed to you, I'm gonna still be your wife, your husband. So I thought that was great to hear you say that. So come on in, Miko. What you got to say to Miko?
Yeah, I think that was very
Same
well.
question.
Yeah, I think that was very well said, Ralph. And you talked about, even it sounds like your wife has some sickness, so you being committed, in sickness and in health. I think that's honorable and admirable. Yeah, and I would also say that love is a choice. You have to choose your spouse every day. I have to make a conscientious decision to choose to love my wife how I know
Mm,
my wife wants to be loved. My wife has had to teach me how she likes to be loved. I've had to teach my wife how I like to be loved. I love words of affirmation. Tell me I'm doing a good job. She
mm,
likes gifts. She wants me to take her out at least once a month. Just let me spend time with her. But I will say, early on, whenever I was talking to older men about when do you know that you're ready to be married, and some of the best advice I got was you're ready to be married when you're ready to sacrifice for the greater good of that woman. Whenever you're able to put, in a lot of ways, your needs to the side so that she can have her needs met, and then you pray that you have a spouse that's also doing the same thing for you. Each person putting in 100%, so that your marriage is working. And I think for us also just making time for one another. Like for us, like once a week, something like that. And we're not perfect at this, but like once a week, just checking in with each other. Seeing how our weeks are, seeing how we're doing professionally, mentally, spiritually, just making time to check in on someone. And that might be me reminding my wife, like, hey, did you check on me this week? And we just make time
mm,
to dialogue, just because now we went from married to married with one kid to married with two children to being around parents to then moving away from parents. And so we've had a lot of different things happen. And Ralph, my wife, she started having like panic and anxiety attacks after COVID, and it changed a lot of the fabrics of our relationship. And still like choosing to love and serve her, even when things got a lot different. But yeah, I would say you said commitment, and I would also say just add that it's a choice. You got to make a choice every day to choose your spouse, because there are a lot of things that you can choose in the world, but it is God's plan for us to choose our spouse. And you talked about Malachi. I think about the book of Ephesians, where you have the parallel between the bridegroom, Jesus, loving the bride, the church, and Jesus laid down his life for the bride. And the call for men is for us to lay down our lives for our brides, to sacrifice for their greater good, to make sure they're taken care of. And so the call for us is to be sacrificial. And I find it very interesting in the Bible that you don't, there's not a direct command for women to love their husbands, but it is a command for husbands to love their wives. And I think when you do that well, that love will be reciprocated.
mm.
Yeah.
Wow. That is well
That's
said. Well
amazing.
said.
That
Mm,
is amazing. That is amazing. I love that. I absolutely love that. But I'm going to take it a little deeper.
mm,
Because our topic is love, lust, and religion, I'm going to go
yeah.
back to when you first met your wives. Did lust play a part in that? Or did you say that, her her God through her was so beautiful that that's why you chose her? Or did lust also play a part in your selection process?
I'm,
Rap cheese, he got to go first.
hey, I'm gonna just be real. Uh, Hecky to the knob. I'm gonna tell you how it went down. So when I first met her, we was actually at a church event. We weren't at church, but we was at like a off-site event with church folk. And she come walking through the door. I don't even know who she was. I'm like, daggone, who is this chocolate drop right here? And us as guys, we checking out the body shape and all that good stuff. I'm like, okay, I see you, I see you. And so come to find out, I lean over to her aunt, and I didn't know that that was her niece. I was like, Miss Ruth, you know who this girl is right here? She's like, yeah, that's my niece. I was like, for real? Can you introduce me? She said, Ralph, quit playing. Go on somewhere. You play too much. So if you those that know me, they know I joke and play a lot or whatever. But
Yeah.
eventually she introduced me to her. And for me, it's with most guys, it's always going to be those looks, young, attractive, curvaceous, but one thing I will say about Erica is that she was very modest, unlike some of the girls now, to where they very revealing, showing all the business, leaving no chance for imagination on the mind or whatever. But she
Mhm.
had just enough seductiveness, but it was very classy, you
Yeah.
know. Uh, so for me, that's what really attracted me. Now, out of all the girls that I've seen, she stood out the most, just because she wore those Coach purses. She had those. I guess what back then was New York Learner, or I guess that was a big store. Anything coming out of that store,
Burners.
it was very classy,
Mhm.
like chic, elegant, casual vibes coming out of that store. And so I was like, yeah, that's the kind of woman I'm talking about. And she was grown, you know what I'm saying? She was mature and stuff like that. So she already had a style. So, once I
Mhm.
got past the physical, then, I'm peeping out, how she dressed, and she wasn't too gaudy with the makeup, it was very natural. Like if she wore any makeup at all, I couldn't really hardly tell. But those were the things that really attracted me. It went, from the physical, I'm checking out your style. And now the next thing, do you have a conversation?
Yeah.
And eventually we got around to, getting on the phone and meeting and stuff like that. So, but yeah, it was the physical. I ain't gonna lie.
It was the physical.
And you, D'Amico?
Yeah.
Demeko.
So I was actually with Vicky, uh, and I was telling her about my now wife Andrea. I was like, hey, I met this young woman, I'm digging her, and we've been talking for a little minute, and she was like, are you dating her? I said, nah. And she was like, well, you might want to try to holler at her. So I think I called her like that same night, and we started dating. And I was actually in Texas doing the clinical rotation for licensed physical therapist assistant school, and she was back in Mississippi. So we started dating over the phone. But this was like the first Christian woman that I had talked to. And so prior to meeting her, I had been abstinent, celibate. I don't know how many, maybe like a couple years before meeting her, just because like I was taking my relationship with God very seriously. So I came to faith in 2011, and we started dating in 2013. And so I had about 2 years where God was just working on me and helping me to see women rightly and to treat them not like only sexual objects for my pleasure. And so it took me some time to get there. And so this was like the first relationship where like we were trying to uh honor God with our lives and with our bodies, and not see what we can get away with. So like we
Mhm.
tried, I think we kissed twice, believe it or not, we kissed twice, and we realized that it wasn't a good idea because we know what we were wanting to do. And so after that second time I kissed her in her apartment, and her knees almost buckled, I was like, yeah, we probably need to probably need to. And so
Well, I
by
feel
God,
like you're exaggerating on that part, but okay.
no, I'm telling you, I'm telling you, I was like, yeah, this ain't good. It got steamy. It got steamy. And then from there, um, yeah, we abstained from sex. So we dated for oh, I can't say that word. Can I say that word?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I read some of the rules. Uh I was like, I don't know if that's a YouTube appropriate word. But so we
You can say
abstained.
seg.
Say again.
You can say seg, segg. People say that to substitute the word.
Or I can say intimacy. We were able to abstain from physical intimacy up until our wedding day, and it was worth the wait. It was worth the wait. We had an
Mhm.
amazing wedding night, but it was a struggle. You hear me? It was a struggle. So Raph was talking about his wife curvaceousness. One time, my wife She graduated from college and she had on this like yellow dress. I didn't know what was under her graduation gown, but she had like a graduation party afterwards. And yeah, it took everything within me to stay off of her.
Not to have the
Because
party.
yeah, because your boy had been abstinent. I had been abstinent for a while, and they say you can't miss what you ain't never had. And I already had, and so yeah, the struggle the struggle was really real, but I was very serious. I was serious about my relationship with God, and I was serious about honoring my wife. Yeah, yeah.
That's
Devon, I don't know if I'm saying
amazing.
it right. Devin or Devon said struggle ain't the word.
Right.
Yeah, that's my boy.
So, so what things did you bring into play when practicing abstinence as well as sustaining, being that you are a carnal man? Besides your love for God and your commitment to God and commitment to weight, you're still a carnal man. What things can you just give to the everyday man that's saying, I no longer want to just act on first reaction? What types of things that you incorporate to allow
Yeah,
you to wait so long?
yeah, that's a great question. So I think part of it for Andre and I, we had physical curfews, so we weren't together past a certain time. So we thought about, the old folks where I'm from say ain't nothing open past 12 but legs. That's what they used to tell us. And so, so we implemented physical curfews, and then we also had curfews on the phone. We wouldn't talk past a certain time. So we had those physical curfews and those phone curfews. And then we also had accountability. We had other
Mhm.
brothers and sisters in Christ. We try not to hang out alone a lot. When you alone and the lights are dim, it's real easy to go from A to Z. And
Right.
so we had to put those things in practice. And y'all hear me saying it was very challenging and very tempting. But we both were very serious. And of course, getting closer to wedding night, the temptation grew stronger and stronger and stronger. But just having those physical curfews and the phone curfews were helpful. And then also, honestly, having friends that were straight up blocking, running interference, that made sure that we weren't alone together too much. And so we definitely had friends that were straight up hating on us, which was good. We needed that. And so I would say for men, if that's what you're pursuing, if you're trying to honor God with your life and with your body and your significant other, you're gonna need accountability. Just because
Mhm.
there are a lot of things that go across our eyes that they're definitely going to tempt us. Like, we're men, but it's also, having brothers that you can be like, hey man, I'm struggling, like I need your help. Calling, having a brother you could call, and sometimes that's, I think confessing to God is easier to confessing to a brother or sister, because God is not going to judge you. But if you tell a friend, you're like, oh man, I wonder what they're gonna think about me, how they gonna perceive me.
Mhm.
I'm not as strong as they thought that I was, and really, we're all sinful and we fall short of the glory of God. And there's actually power in freedom and confession. Like the scriptures say, we can confess our sins one to another so we can be
Mhm.
healed. It's actually liberating when you're able to when you're able to say, like, man, I'm struggling. I'm having a very difficult time. Like, uh, pray for me. And then, like, and you find that when you tell the people in your lives like what's going on, most of the time they're encouraging. It's like, hey, I understand. Like, I can relate. It's hard for me too. And I'm around men all the time. A lot of our struggles are very similar. We lust, pride, sometimes anger, and so we have a lot of similar struggles. And we want to make sure
Mhm.
we're holding each other accountable, and also that we're safe spaces for people to say hard things to. Because I've heard some very extreme things from men, and like to hear them say and lay out the worst thing that they ever done, and for me to respond, you're still a child of God. You're the
Mhm.
righteousness of God through Christ Jesus. Nothing you can do can separate you from the love of God. And so yeah, we need those reminders.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Mm.
What
And I
what
just
Those
want to
are
say
great
to
tips.
Yeah. And I just want to say, it's great to hear you say that, because you have people that are not on that spiritual level, that commitment level that you are with God, and to hear you being who you are in God, sit here and have some of the same struggles that other men and women have,
Right.
that is not there yet is very motivating, and it makes it easier to come to you. I always say that we have to be careful not to be the person to hell, but to love them to Christ. Like if they have been missing, in
That's
church,
good.
or if they're not doing what it is they're supposed to be doing, instead of, making them feel bad about it, but
Right.
coming to them with concern and love, that'll get them. Because the other way, it kind of like run them off. So just like you said, it's
Right.
easier sometimes to confess to God than it is to people, because of how
Yeah.
people can respond, and again, the way you see it. So I want to ask this too. So one of the things that I notice when I'm working with, um whether it's a woman or a man,
Hmm.
and they started off as, some of them were able to maintain their virginity until they got married.
Yeah.
And then once they get married, the intimate part is a part of the relationship too. But
Right.
for some reason, because it was viewed as a bad thing to fornicate,
Yes.
sometimes
Yes.
people think that the sexual part is bad. So all we need to do is the basics so we can have kids, but that
Right.
is not true. So when
Right.
you're in these relationships and the man or the woman have their sexual desires and need that want to be met, it's not
Right.
always met, not because the person is not able, but because they can't break free from, you know, the fact that of the way that it's viewed, or they view this. What do you have to say about your own journey, or to those that may be on this journey? What is your advice, Ralph and Demeko, to other
Mm.
men when it comes to this?
I would say one thing that's kind of like helped me out was he had mentioned earlier the accountability. Like I have maybe like one or two friends that I could be like transparent with and just kind of
Yeah.
like just share, my struggles, like where I'm really at.
Yeah.
Um, early on, and I'll touch back around. He had mentioned earlier too about we used to group date, so dating in groups, that seemed to help. But like I said, one of my downfalls, we did not set those, okay, 12 o'clock, cutoffs or what have you. Sometimes we will stay out later after you done kicked it with the group. Then, if she's riding with you, you got, go drop her off. Then you got to walk up to the door. Then you know what I'm saying? So some that was some of my downfalls. But even with that, I still had a group of men, older men, and my peers
Mm.
that will hold me accountable. Just making sure I was doing what I was supposed to be doing, and even if I made a mistake, they embraced me and they told me, "Hey, man, just get back on it. Keep moving forward. Definitely you want to confess these things to the Lord or what have you, but don't make this a habit or what have you."
Yeah.
And so that's why I say I circle back to commitment, knowing that okay, you're you're supposed to be the head,
Mhm.
and she is the body or the church, and you're supposed to be leading her somewhere or guiding her into righteousness and into
Hmm.
purity. So if you're defiling her before she actually becomes your bride, then you're not presenting her like the church is supposed to be.
Mm.
Christ talks
That's
about how
good.
one day he's going to come back for a church without spot, without wrinkle. And so my analogy is like that, like while you're dating, those boundaries needs to be there. And unfortunately, sometimes you go ahead and hug too long, or you go ahead and hold her hand too long, or what have you, and stuff like that, and then you get aroused and things of that nature. So uh but it just made me think, hey, she is a godly woman. You shouldn't defile her. Also, on top of that, she is your sister in Christ. So you have to treat her in a certain way. So I that was my goal. Those were my aims when I was dating early on, and I made sure that our engagement session was quite short.
Yes, Lord. Yes, Lord.
Some
Yes.
people they have two, three,
Yes.
4, 5 years engagement,
No. No, sir.
uh, but ours was quite short, and
Yes.
we got right to it. So,
Yeah.
um,
Mm-hmm.
but again, that accountability of having people there to hold you accountable is most important. Do I regret losing my virginity early on? Yes, I do. Do I regret, uh, doing sexual acts that I shouldn't have been doing? Yes, because when we actually said I do, uh, that's an experience that I'll never say that I've had because you didn't wait. So when people used to make fun of me, oh man, you a virgin, you ain't been with a girl, boo boo. So for years I went as a virgin, even into my 20s, right? And I was like,
Yeah.
I'm just sticking to my guns. I went to, the love weight conferences with other young folk growing up or whatever. And, I just stuck to it. But then when you start getting those urges and your body start changing, it's like, okay, what's going on here? I never felt this way before. So you either give in to it or you like, Lord, my brother need help, a cup of glass water, cold shower, whatever. Uh, but it was a challenge. It was a challenge, and there was times where I found myself caving in or what have you. So uh, I wish I was stronger. I wish I would have made it all the way to the finish line. I made it to about 21, 22 before I lost my
Yeah.
virginity, whatever. Uh, but I wish I had waited all the way into
Yeah.
my wedding.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing that Vicky, when you're asking a question about purity, purity. So two things: purity culture. I think in a lot of ways has damaged and it really caused a lot of damage around intimacy
Oh, yes.
between men and women, because you have they created and shaped intimacy into something that was dishonorable or something that God didn't design. Like God is an amazing designer, and He made our bodies to enjoy one another, and purity culture made it as if intimacy was not something that was good. We all know that it's good, and they made it. They demonized it, and I think in some ways I understand what they were trying to do. They were trying to create a seriousness around intimacy, but
Mhm,
what they did, um, there was part of you that whenever intimacy came with your spouse, if you spent all these years viewing intimacy as something that was not honorable, now you're taking
mhm,
that into your marriage, and it's going to affect your intimacy, because something
mhm,
that God meant to be for your good and pleasurable and sensational, you now have this negative lens and connotation around. So I think purity culture in a lot of ways has done a lot of damage, and
mhm,
so I think like the way we talk to young people about intimacy, we need to be mindful of what we say and how we say it, and I think we need to talk to them about the seriousness of it, but also to make sure we're not demonizing something meant to be pleasurable and pleasurable and sensational. And then I would also say, even to Raf's point, even just thinking about what it's like being, I don't know what it was like for you, Raf, growing up, but I grew up in the country, and it was like intimacy was all there was, and like, I had cousins, that started very young, and
mhm,
on their intimacy journeys, and so you feel like this pressure, and
Mhm.
I don't know what it was like for y'all, but if you're a young man and if you got a pimple, they'll be like, "Oh, you need to go get you some." That doesn't mean you're not getting you some. And so you're so you get laughed at because you're not having physical intimacy with a woman. And so and but that's the culture that we grew up around. And so
Mhm.
kind of like you Rab, like I waited till I was like, till I was older. I mean, I had cousins and friends, they were 10, 11, and
Mhm.
and that was like, in some ways like normative. And so like when you're thinking that's the norm. And so for me, like that physical intimacy was something that was because I had older cousins introducing me to older women. And so like I'm a young buck, and so it's like, there was probably there's no probably, there was definitely some trauma that was even associated to something that was once again meant to be good. And so you have to like negotiate that, heal from that, talk about those things.
Mhm.
um
Mhm.
but but for men, we definitely need to be uh and in culturally we need to be championing young men and young women who are like, oh, it's honorable. I'm so glad that you are abstaining because you love God and you want to honor your spouse with your bodies. And so, but yeah, I think that's two things. Purity culture has done a lot of damage, and then just culturally being young black men, and sometimes the like unwritten expectations
Mhm.
of like, oh, you need to be having physical intimacy early so you can be good at it when you get married, which honestly, if we're honest, um we need, like, whenever we get married, uh, asking your wife good questions about, the physical intimacy that you're having, so that you can be
Mhm.
having the best physical intimacy that you can be having. Because
Mhm.
whenever I was young, I wasn't asking no questions about, is this enjoyable? What could I do different? What can I improve? Because you're
Mhm.
young and you're prideful and you think you're doing something, and and really she's not enjoying it like she should be. But if you're asking
Mhm.
good questions, what can I be doing? What can I do different? What can I do better? Like, I think that's something that you had to learn being married, and putting aside your prides and just seeing how can I best satisfy her. So I think that's something that I learned, not really the hard way, but just through trial and just really just asking good questions.
Mhm.
And I think that it's been beneficial for both of us.
Yeah.
I'll add. You asked, what was it like for me growing up? Uh,
Yeah.
as a early teen, I moved to Indianapolis from Florida when I was like 9 or 10. So
Mm.
my parents, they were very adamant about keeping me in church, keeping me, keeping my nose in the book. They had me memorizing scriptures, teaching me how to
Mm.
pray, things of nature. So when I first came up here, it was like I hit the ground running. Boom. I didn't quite understand, the gospel and salvation and stuff like that, but I was exposed to it early on, and I was
Mhm.
around other young people uh, that their parents was putting their nose in the book, keeping them, in the little summer, what they call it, the gospel camps during the summer, whatever. So it was very close knit, whole bunch of families all doing the same thing, and they
Yeah.
keeping their kids all close together, and everybody's moving in the same fashion. So even from like 9 all the way up until my teens, it's always been Jesus, Bible, go to church, and I've developed these relationships with other teens along the way, and we learn to have fun without having fun, joking and stuff of that nature without anyone being inappropriate. So for me, it was a little bit different. My family, uh, they didn't allow us to watch certain movies growing up. We couldn't listen
Mhm.
to certain music or what have you. So I guess if you want to say I lived a sheltered life as a teen, but when I look back on it now, I'm kind of grateful because I think that's why I at least made it into my early 20s before I really started getting physically active with anyone, because I really didn't date early on. I mean, I saw girls at school and stuff like that, but just the direction that my parents had me going early on, it was like holiness, Bible, church, God, love
Yeah,
Jesus,
yeah,
focus on that,
yeah.
you know, deny yourself, pick up your cross, follow him. It was straight and narrow. It was Jesus or the highway. So I really didn't have too much time to really think about, you know, going over here checking this out or going over here. And if there were an opportunity, my parents, they quickly nipped it in the butt, because my dad was like, boy, uh she too fast, she ain't right for you, let her go, tell her go about her business. My mama put in her 2 cents. So they kept safeguarding me from a
Mm,
lot of mistakes dealing with the opposite sex or whatever. And
yeah,
so I look, like I said, I look back on all this stuff, and it's like I'm grateful, because during that same time, while I'm on the bus, there's teenage girls that are pregnant early as like 7th, 8th grade.
hmm,
And this one particular girl I know, she was pregnant every single year from middle school until we graduated.
Oh my God.
Wow.
mm, mm.
Every single year. And I was like, what is going on? And what made it so funny, she used to make fun of me. I'm thinking, okay, but you got kids. I don't know what this all about, what you doing over there, but you got, every time I see you, you got kids. You obviously, you ain't too happy while you making fun of me. So I don't know if she was just picking on me because I wasn't being active or whatever, but I said I didn't want nothing to do with that. And I got to see a lot of the drama. Some of these kids, they were depressed. You know, they come to school, some of them, I guess, some of them at certain points, the school was allowing them to bring the kids, because we had a daycare at the school or whatever.
Wow.
So you know, you still go to your class, drop your baby off at daycare, pick them up, whatever, whatever. Uh, but I was like, that's not the life for me. And all the stuff that
Yeah,
they had to go through just to say they had a boyfriend or I'm in a relationship, the direction they were going, I see why my parents kept that shield around me to protect me. It's like, it's not worth it. At the end of the day, it's not worth it. And then a lot of these girls, they get into their 20s, their 30s, they done had all these kids, and then they realize, what man in their right mind is going to want you? Because if I'm single and I'm doing well for myself, and you've already had two, three, four, five kids, why would I pick you when I can just go either go get me a virgin or get a girl that hasn't, you know, don't have any kids or what
Mhm.
have? And then it register in their mind later in life. You know what? I was balling out, hot girl summer all through my 20s and 30s, and now you single with all these daggone kids you got to take care of, and you're not helping yourself. So,
Mm,
but that was my upbringing. It was
yeah,
Jesus, straight and narrow, stay focused, work on trying to figure out what it is in life that you want to do. And then once you get that figured out a little bit, then you start thinking about the girls. Because my dad always told me, you know, it's like the girls ain't going nowhere, son. They always gonna be there. Now I know you got
yeah.
these urges rising up in you, but trust me, that urge isn't going anywhere, and the girls isn't going anywhere. But if you get yourself together, that's gonna make you even more attractive to the right girl. So, but yeah, that was my upbringing.
Good
So,
advice. Yeah,
gentlemen,
and it sounds like both
with
of
that,
you have kind of like,
Aretha, hold on. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
yes.
With that being said, and with us living in a very sexualized culture,
Hmm.
talk about the challenges of, loving one woman, being a Christian, and honoring God in everything that you do.
Yeah. Uh, yeah. I mean, our world is extremely sexualized, and so if you're watching a show on Netflix, you can't go past the first episode without intimacy scenes. Like it's
Hmm.
it's just so ingrained in our culture, and it's so normative that you have to be watchful and vigilant. And then you gotta know yourself. And I think you also have to have safeguards so that uh, you don't you don't leave any room for the enemy. not only for you to, um, it was one woman. This might be a little extreme, but I think it was a good point. She did say women. She was especially talking about women in the church. Women aren't objects for you to accidentally sleep with. And so, like, I think like part of our kind of shaping of women, and how we see them has to be changed in a bit, because but also you want to be and create safe spaces. For me, if I'm having like a private or conversation with the woman, I want to be in a public place, right? Like, I don't need nobody saying that I was somewhere doing something that I wasn't doing. And so, like, I ain't meeting nobody at my crib. I'm not meeting with a woman at my house, nothing like that. I'm in a public place. I'm letting people know where I'm at. I'm trying to let other people be present with me. See if my wife could be there, see if a brother could be there. Just making sure that no one speaks about me in a way that isn't true. And so the world is very sexualized. There's a lot that we have to safeguard ourselves from. And so that might mean like eh, looking at like what you're watching and just being mindful of that. um and just being open and transparent with your wife, because like now that things are the world is so sexualized, it's like a lot of stuff I'm like, man, I'm not even trying to watch this. um and but it's everywhere. And so and then, like, as it relates to my spouse, I'm making sure that I'm choosing her, and then I'm also we're working on one another, right? Like, we're working on our relationship. We got kids, but still making time for date night. My mom took a job here, so I'm like, hey, we got more time to go. We went and saw Equalizer 3. Let's go see a
Hey.
movie. uh you know we got to see Zell. And so making sure we're making time for one another. I don't know who said it, but like, over the course of your relationship, you might be married to 5 different people, like, in your spouse, as your spouse is changing, like, if you're paying attention to it. So when we first got married, it was just me and my wife. And then now my wife has a child. Now my wife has 2 children, and now we live in another state, and there's been so many changes. And making sure I'm paying attention to her as she is changing, asking questions, and seeing and making sure that I'm loving her well, and loving her like she needs to be loved and wants to be loved.
Mhm.
I think it was one guy, Kev, on stage. Like, he bought his wife like these shoes that he wanted his wife to have, but his wife didn't want those shoes. She was like, I don't like those shoes. Those shoes ain't cute. They not functional. Don't buy me those shoes. And so, like, asking questions like, hey, what do you like? What should I buy you? Those types of things. Yeah, but I think to your question, it is a challenge. But I think, like, part of it is just staying focused on your spouse, and not putting yourself in situations for you to be tempted and to fall. So if a woman slide in my DMs, guess who's in my DMs? My wife. I'm like, hey, this person just sent this message. I ain't talked to him in 6 years. I just want you to know. Uh, and you gotta have open and honesty. Like, young men, if you can't leave your phone in the room with your woman, there's a problem. If she ain't got your unlock code, it's a problem. If she ain't got your passwords, it's a problem. And
Mhm.
so you want to be with someone that you trust, and then also trust you.
That's
Because,
right.
like, I'm so glad, like, gone is the days of, like, having to hide and secrecy. It should be open and intimacy and in honesty. And that's what you're desiring in a spouse. And all the other stuff, that's for the birds.
Mm-hmm.
Mm. Okay.
Yeah. Ask that question again, April.
The question was, with us living in such a sexualized world at this point, how do you stay true to one woman, loving your wife, stay true to the word and honoring God?
Okay. So it goes back to value And I understand that a lot of marriages they're in different seasons. So depending on how close you are to the Lord in that season, and kind of like what he said, not setting yourself up too far, will really dictate that outcome. Now, I'm saying this 24 years later. Now, early on, I had a different mindset than I do today because I've been through a lot of stuff. We've been
Mm-hmm.
up, we've been down. I've had money, didn't have no money, sickness, health, all that, right? So you tend to not deviate, but you just look at marriage from a different light now. Now that you
Mm-hmm.
got more experience, because early on it was like, okay, when you saying the vows, you really truly don't understand what you getting into,
Right.
and you really don't understand what you're committing to.
Right.
Mhm.
Right.
And it wasn't until those words that I didn't quite understand back then, it get tested.
Mm-hmm.
And the rubber really meets the road, and it's like, okay, for better or worse. Now, early on, my 20s and 30s, you think, okay, I got to get money. If I don't have money, she may stick around. We may get into it. She may leave. I may leave. Now, in my 40s or late 40s, hitting 50s, it's kind of like, there's some substance here because early on I was thinking immaturely. Now I'm thinking more mature, and it's like, okay, the roles have changed, and I'm gonna give you guys a little context of what I mean by that. Early on in my marriage, Erica, she was pretty much the sole breadwinner,
Mm-hmm.
right? Then when I got into my mid 30s, the role slowly started changing. So my prayer was, okay, she been carrying the weight all this time. Granted, I was working, right? But I wasn't making the kind of money that she was making. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and my prayer was, okay, how do I make enough income to where she don't have to work no more, or give her the option to come home?
Mhm.
So I'm thinking, for better, for worse, richer or poor, richer or poor. Because in my mind, it was always a thing of I got to prove myself because I didn't have this status. I didn't make enough money. So I was always on this seeking approval for her, well, from her or what have you. And then those roles start to change. And now I end up making two, three, four times what she used to make. And now all the responsibility financially is on me. Now, from a worldly standpoint, they'd be like, well, okay, you're the man, you got clout, you got options. So you can dictate how this relationship go. Early on, I couldn't do that. But even though I know who Erica is, I know what we've been through, I know where we're at, I can't take a worldly philosophy and the understanding and apply that to my marriage. Because number one, I got people watching. Two, I'm going to be held accountable. And
Yeah.
three, at the end of the day, I want to do what's going to be honorable, to the Lord. And then I got my kids watching. You know what I'm saying? So they're getting up in age and they're trying to figure out financially how does this thing work out, right? So now I got to be a continual role model for them and teach my sons, okay, get out here, get it, work hard, have a good work ethic, get yourself together so you can provide for your family financial and stuff like that. Now, the other aspect, for better or for worse, well, in sickness and in health, so that changed in our relationship. Early on, good times, right? We're both healthy, vibrant, we're out doing stuff, taking trips, yada, yada, yada. But then later, that changes. So now it's like, okay, my verbal commitment is being challenged every single day.
Mm.
Now, granted, I work around a lot of majority women, and now I have this sick spouse on my hand. What do I
Yep.
do? So my dad
Right.
came to me one day and he was like, well, son, I see your business growing quite successfully. And how are you maintaining and keeping, this thing together? And I was like, well, Dad, honestly, I don't know. I mean, it has to be the Lord because some of these women are drop dead gorgeous that I'm photographing. When I go home, it's like there is no comparison. And I didn't really think hard about what he was trying to tell me until Erica like got really sick, and it scared me to the
Mm.
point it's like I thought I was about to lose her. Now the
Well,
flesh was like, if something were to happen to her, God forbid, you got options, right?
Hmm.
'Cause everybody know you in the city, they know what you're doing, blah 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 blah. But it's like that's not what I signed up for though.
right.
That's not where my commitment lies. It's not to see okay who's up next, but to be faithful all the way to the end.
Yeah.
So I come back full circle just saying that my whole view about marriage has really changed from where when I first started. Even about down to the commitment, the money, the sickness, the health, all those things that we said over 20 plus years ago that I really didn't quite understand. I look at that totally different now. And then you talked about you was asking about the monogamy, right? Our world today, from a worldly standpoint, they'll say, okay, well, it's okay to have multiple girls or multiple women or what have you. In the world, in a sense, they're okay to do that because most of them they don't know, they don't know God. They're not saved. They're not born again and stuff like that. So that's expected of them to do that.
Hmm.
Um, but even when I look at that and I look at some of the things that's in the Bible, it just kind of make me think like, man, there was some cats back in the day that had multiple wives,
Hmm.
you know, and they could afford it. You look at Abraham, he had a gang load of women, including his wife, concubine, stuff like that. You look at King Solomon, he had a plethora of women, stuff like that. But I know here in the Western culture, we're I'm not gonna say we're forced, but that is the law of the land where it's like, that's the preferred relationships construct is one man, one woman in a committed relationship. But when you start looking at other cultures abroad, that's how they get down. You go to India or Iran or some of these other foreign countries, they still doing that. They have multiple wives. So uh it, it it just made my mind just really open up to everything when this whole sickness came about. It really challenged everything that I said I was committing to. Um, and so I would tell anybody that if you're gonna really live wholeheartedly to the Lord, that make sure you understand what you're really getting into. You may not have the experience to back up what you're committing to, but there need to be some type of fortitude to where you know what I'm putting what they call it. I'm drawing a line in the sand,
Hmm.
Yeah.
and this is where I'm at. God knows where I'm at. I'm making this commitment to this young lady or this woman, what have you, and this is how we're gonna ride or whatever. Because I'm telling you, things will change when those vows that we committed to start to
Yeah.
really start twisting and working in and out of our lives. Your whole perspective about sex, marriage, women, children, all that stuff, it changes. It changes when your stuff get tested. So um but yeah, that's where I'm at with it right now.
Yeah.
It's still being committed. Uh but I'm just looking back from where I started and I just see all of that in a different lens now.
Yeah. Real
Okay.
quick,
We,
real quick about and if you look at the Old Testament, most of Dr. Esau McCauley, who wrote Reading While Black, who he does like a dialogue. When you look at polygamy in the Bible, most of those instances where those men had multiple women, it ended poorly for them. It it
Mhm.
didn't it didn't work out in their favor having multiple wives. Like it was bad for them. Abraham and a lot of these men who had multiple wives and concubines. It didn't end well with them. And I think when Jesus comes onto the scene, he fulfills the law and raises the standard of the law and tells us we get in the New Testament that we're to be husbands of one wife. And so, I think even like in my bio, just saying like I'm the husband of one wife, just because
Mhm.
like this, you hit it on it too, Rav. Like, yeah, in some countries and cultures, you can have multiple wives because you can afford it. And so it is
Mhm.
a kind of a legal tender, a transactional thing where we're saying, yeah, I can have, or I could live in a place where I could have multiple wives, but it's actually better for me if I take, if I see deficiencies in my spouse and she sees them in me, and I take water and seed and help to grow her in those areas and nurture her in those areas, versus me going to get somebody else that
Mhm.
might be younger or more attractive. But if I'm, and it really my contentment needs to be in Christ, and then for God to ask me to be content in what He's given me, because I know one day, like as a young man, and as I get older, I won't be as sensual. And then if I'm really taking time
Mhm.
to care for my spouse, love her well, and appreciate her, I'm gonna have someone that's gonna care for me and not care for her. But I would just say that too. Like, yeah, for the men in the Bible who had multiple wives, it didn't go well for them.
Yeah, there's a lot of drama, a lot of drama.
Right.
Yeah.
Facts.
And I just want to say this, and we can kind of close it after this. But this is just I wanted to say this early. I wanted to get you guys' perspective on this. Are you guys familiar with Taj Forbet, the gospel singer? I
Yes.
know you are, Rico.
Yeah.
Are you,
Mhm.
Yeah.
Ralph?
I am.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So do you remember a couple of months ago where him and his wife was having his birthday party, and they had the video of them dancing? I think she was backing it up on him or whatever, and you had a lot of
Mhm.
people getting their comments about him being a pastor or whatever, and that was appropriate or
Mhm.
inappropriate. As couples, we're people and we like to have fun.
Right. Right.
Um, how did you guys feel about that? And how do you situate yourself when it comes to things like that? You know,
Yeah.
Mm,
I would say, I mean, Ty is a public figure, and because he's a public figure, he's gonna face more scrutiny than a person who's not a public figure. And
mhm.
so maybe next time when you're enjoying a time with your spouse, don't have cameras, or be like, don't be recording us. So I don't know. I'm not as like stiff and like uptight. But I do think that the scriptures do say if we call someone to sin or stumble, then we sin against Christ. And so I think we do have to think about like public perception and how they see
Mhm.
us. I think that's very important, how people see us, and if we're causing someone to stumble. And I think we need to be thinking about that in a lot of areas of our lives. And so take that very seriously. If I'm causing someone to stumble, and if Ty, if he calls someone to stumble, then he has to own up to that. I think like having a good time with your spouse in a private setting. I think you got to know who you're around too, right? Like there
Right.
are things
mhm.
when I'm with my spouse and I'm with certain people, and like, just say for instance, I'm around somebody and I know that he's a former alcoholic. I cannot have a drink. Like, that's cool. Like, it's not gonna hurt me. Sometimes it's like situational, just thinking about
Mhm.
who I'm around. But yeah, I think that Ty and then all of us have to consider, like, is this gonna cause someone to stumble? And then you gotta have better friends too. Like, don't be recording me and posting my stuff, on social media. Like, I'm having a good time.
That
If
was
I'm having a
crazy.
good Yeah, if I'm having a good time, my wife don't be recording me, and we having fun, having a good time. So you got to know who you around, know your setting, um, and but I mean, for him, everybody, he's a public, he's a public figure, so he knows that people are watching. So you gotta you
And
gotta be mindful of that.
what's your final take that you want to share with people? What do you want to leave people with before we go to wrap?
Yeah, I would say following following God is not easy. Um, it is a challenge. Sanctification, it starts whenever we come to faith, and it lasts our whole life, which means that it's slow. Us becoming more and more like God is slow. So we have to be gracious to ourselves, and we need other people to be gracious to us as well. Um, and I would say, um, finding someone that you can commit to for the rest of your life is worthy, and it's going to take work, and like Raph alluded to, you're going to have ups and downs. Like our first year of marriage was great, it was blissful, it was amazing. Year 5 was very challenging, but when
Mhm.
I know that I have someone that's committed to me as much as I'm committed to them, I know I'm going to put the work in. And so I was challenged when I heard a brother say, whenever you go out and you work and you put in a full day's work, whenever you get home, you got to clock back in and put in another full day's work. You got to clock in, check on your spouse, make sure she good, clock in, check on your children, make sure they good. And at the end of the day, a man should be exhausted because he worked hard for the glory of the Lord when he left the house, and he worked hard for the glory of the Lord when he got back to the house. So I would say, um, it's work. It's work following God. It's work loving and choosing your spouse, but it's a worthy work, and it's an honorable work, and God is pleased when we work hard to glorify Him.
When you said that a man should be wore out because
Okay.
of
Yeah,
his wife, I was like,
yeah,
y'all need to let
Yes.
Ross know that because I'm doing a good thing here. Because I know I be
right.
wearing that.
Do what you
And
got to
Ralph,
do.
go ahead and take us out. What would you like to say? Your comment and your what you would like to share with people.
I would say, uh, for any couple, you need to get around other couples that are trying to live the same lifestyle that you trying to live. Because if you around half steppers, people that are tiptoeing in and out, you're gonna be influenced to do the same kind of stuff and think that it's gonna be okay. One of the things that helped us early on was going to couples retreats. So every year we
Mm,
would go to this place called Committed for Life, and we will learn life skills that we could apply in our marriage. We learn how to communicate. We
mm,
learn how to do conflict resolution. We learn about the finances and stuff like that. So, old pastor once told me, he was like, Ralph, marriage is like a ATM. So you can't take out anything if you haven't made any deposits. So
mm-hmm.
the skill set of communicating, being vulnerable to your spouse, that's a skill.
Yeah.
We as men, we don't naturally want to get into our feelings and stuff like that, but having the art of communicating and talking, and not when you're trying to handle issue, not attacking one another but attacking the problem, that
Yeah.
takes time to develop. Because
Mm,
she's emotional. Most women, that y'all go from y'all emotion. We as men, we're more logical, concrete, boom boom boom, right? So the two becoming one, it takes time to develop, and you got to have enough patience and
yeah.
being gentle. And one thing that helped me out as far as developing my skill of communication was putting myself in the other person's shoes.
Mm-hmm.
Now I can sit up here and voice my opinion.
Mhm.
Okay, well, this is how I felt, this is how I think it should be, blah blah blah. Uh, but then I'm hearing what she's saying, but I'm not listening to what she's saying. So then I had to put myself on the other side of the conversation and view it the way that she viewed it, and try to understand it. And sometimes I'll say, okay, so let me run this back to you. Okay, so you're saying blah 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 blah, and then I will make my point versus just attacking. You know what I'm saying? So I'm trying to be very strategic in how I communicate with
Mm-hmm.
her. So I would say communication is by far one of the top things that any couple uh, needs to master. That you need someone to teach it to you, and that's why I say go to couples retreats like Community for Life or wherever you may be listening to. Find a couples ministry where they will teach you the skill of communication. And then the other thing I would say is learn to work as one in partnership with your spouse. One of the things that I got Eric and I on page was we was put in charge of facilitating a couple small study group. Now, one of the roles with that is you have to study out the lesson. You have to take time, read the scripture, pray, prep, and all this stuff. So finding something concrete that you can do together as a couple will either draw you closer together or will push you further away. But initially, when we first started, we were clashing because she had a different learning style, I had a different learning style. So we have to put our differences beside ourselves and learn to come together as one, because now we have to present this stuff to the group. So that right there really helped us unite in our marriage by learning to work together on projects.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll say those two things: learn the skill of communicating, taking the time to understand the art of it and the science of how that works. Find something that you guys can do uh, together as a couple, where it forces you to work on the greater good versus your feelings, his feelings, your agenda. Right? You working on it for the sake of someone else.
Mhm.
And then lastly, the financial piece. You can't get around it. You got to have money. As long as inflation is there and things keep going up, you have to have money, and you got to have some type of financial plan in place, because that will be your downfall. If you don't know where your money is going, you're not tracking it or whatever. Regardless if you're making 50,000 or 250,000, that financial, it will bite you in the butt. Trust me, I know. So those are my
Mm-hmm.
three things I think people need to focus on.
Okay, great.
Awesome. This has been an amazing show. I have loved listening to both of you gentlemen. Hopefully, we can have you guys again for sure. Do you want to let people know where to find you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Go ahead,
you
Ralph.
want to go?
Go ahead, brother.
Okay. So they can reach me at ralphvandale.com. That's my website. And my skill set is primarily shooting, luxury weddings, photography, video, things of that nature. And that they can find all my information. I have a bigger following on Facebook under Ralph Vandale or Ralph Vandale Photography than I do on Instagram. So that would be the best way that they can reach out.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I'm Demeko Bivens on Facebook. My name is spelled out for you, and then on Instagram, Miko Suave 116. If you're in the Houston area, hit me up. I know where the good food at, and and I'm a student. And I'm a student of the city. I can tell you where you need to go.
Cool.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys again. Like I said, we would love to have you back. This has been the conclusion of our show. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to Bourbon Nights. Please follow us on Facebook, YouTube, and Spotify. And we will see you again on our next show. Thank you.
Cool.
All right. And have a
Peace.
good bourbon night.
Good night.
Yep.
Good
See ya.
night.
Peace.